Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, we'll give it another few seconds, guys, and then we'll make a start.
Right, should we kick off?
Yeah, go
And
for
then
it.
you can pop in. Okay. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to this is the second webinar that we've done. And this webinar is specifically a tale of two systems. So I'm Molly and I'm joined by Rory. Hi, Rory.
Hi, everyone.
He's gonna lead the session today, and essentially it's to support you on ensuring your merger meets success. So before we jump in, do you mind doing a quick introduction on yourself, Rory?
Yeah, so hi, everyone. My name, as mentioned, is Rory Murphy. I'm underneath Bethan's name at the moment, just realized because I've taken her Zoom for today, who's our lead marketer. So yeah, worked in kind of project management, integration management now for about of 10 years. I've kind of been on both ends of it. So I've been part of firms that have integrated and merged with others. I've also managed this on behalf of other firms. And finally, I've also actually done it where I've managed separation of two organizations, which has been quite interesting. Well, so I definitely have kind of been involved in a lot of different areas. I've kind of seen them work well and work badly. And I hope to kind of share some of our learnings with you all today.
Great. Thanks, Rory. This webinar is aiming to be around 30 minutes, but please feel free to jump in as and when. So whether it's in the comments or just shout out your questions, and it can be as interactive as it needs to be. So over to you, Rory.
Perfect. And just confirm once again that everyone's happy with recording and everyone can see my screen.
We can see your
Sweet.
screen. Yeah, we've got thumbs up.
Perfect. Sweet. So just kind of four areas I want to talk through today. And that is just kind of elements of a successful merger, common pitfalls during a merger, why an integration management office is critical to merger success, and best practices for a high-performing integration management office. And again, we'd like this to be interactive as possible. So at any point you want me to ask any questions, you want me to reiterate something or provide more details, please feel free to interrupt. As much as I love the sound of my own voice, I like interaction as well, so please feel free. So just before I start, I kind of want to focus on a quote that's come from Clayton Christensen from Harvard Business School. And it's quite important that kind of sums up what we're trying to achieve with this, is that the majority of mergers fail because people pay too much attention to the deal and too little to the integration. So I think we've all been in parts of kind of different mergers and integrations where it's been a lot of focus up front on making the deal happen, make sure the financials align, and we can take it from there. Then little was ever focused on actually how this integration takes place and what the after of it is going to look like from day one to day 100 to day 500. So a lot of the focus on today is how we can help make sure this process runs smoothly and get to that position. So first, I would focus on the elements of successful merger. Successful mergers aren't built on strategy alone. They succeed when people, culture, and execution align. So the first of these successful elements is strategic alignment. And the first question you need to understand when you ask this is, are we clear why we're doing this deal? And why is everyone rowing? And is everyone rowing in the same direction? What this means is the merger acquisition does have clearly defined strategic rationale that aligns with long-term goals of both organizations, and does this rationale fully understood and shared across the leadership of both organizations? From here, then we have kind of key components that need to be considered, which is what is the deal thesis? Are we able to articulate the response of the deal and the purpose of it? Do we have value drivers? What will generate value for everyone across this deal? Have we got prioritized objectives? Do we have goal efficiency, innovation, market share, or something else that we're trying to achieve with this? And finally, have we defined performance metrics? Often we might have seen it through our own experience that people have kind of done mergers. They know kind of KPIs of what they're trying to achieve and what long-term goals are looking like. And finally, why does this matter? Because misaligned expectations can lead to fractured priorities and poor execution, and also helps avoid deal fear. So acquiring for growth without a plan or for integration or value capture means that you might be doing this deal, but there's no actual kind of no one's really happy with it. Everyone's afraid to actually do the follow-on integration from the deal because they don't understand what the KPIs for this are. The second of these is something I'm actually quite passionate about is cultural compatibility. And so when you're doing this, you need to ask, can our people and leadership teams work together and do we understand what makes each organization tick? This essentially means that cultures that include values, behaviors, decision-making styles, communication norms, and leadership executions and expectations are aligned and they understand what each other is looking for. Then we also have the compatibility. It doesn't mean being identical. It's understanding how you can complement one another and how you can manage to help each other improve. If you're looking for identical kind of mergers for the same companies, you're not really getting full benefit of what it could be. And the key components of this then are just cultural due diligence, making sure that everything's assessed and aligned, that there's leadership alignment, that employee experience is considered. What are the day-to-day difference between each organization? Is it top-down versus a flat organization? Is there formal or informal communications? Is their efforts attire even smart casual, or in somewhere they're wearing very nice shorts and a shirt? It depends. Again, all these small things make a very important difference. And then why does this matter? Because I think a lot of our experience, and if you look at any research online, culture clash is the leading cause of a failed integration. Poor cultural integration can lead to very high attrition of key talent, employee disengagement, and resistance to change. It can also but then also with strong cultural integration can lead to accelerated trust, productivity, and adoption of new processes to ensure efficient results. And finally, we have executional discipline. You have to ask yourselves, do we have the structure and governance and accountability to turn plans into results? And then what this means is integration needs to be treated as a disciplined, high priority initiative, not an afterthought. It requires a central team, or as we all like to call it, Integration Management Office, or IMO, to develop a detailed roadmap and provide real-time performance tracking to key leadership members. And then what components of this include are just the IMO, as previously mentioned, work streams and governance, which are run by the IMO, synergy realization, comms and change plans, day one and day 100 planning. And then why this matters is because even well-intentioned deals can fall apart without execution discipline. Integration is where most value is either captured or destroyed, and poor coordination is confusion, duplicated work, and stakeholder frustration, and much frustration among the teams that are affected by the integration.
And I was just going to ask Rory, with this, what are some of the risks if these particular elements aren't in place?
So there's quite a few of them, and depending on the situation each organization is often is that there's unclear return on investment, which can frustrate key leadership and investors. There's massive cultural clash, as I mentioned before, which can lead to massive talent loss and employee disengagement. People are just playing by numbers. They're not really engaged in their work anymore. They're not trying to drive towards equal goals. And
Mm.
also, there's wasted value and missed deadline as well that can occur from this that can provide a lot of problems to the organization.
And because I suppose some people might even be looking at this and thinking, I feel like we've done some of this. I feel
Mm.
like we've tried or explored some of this before, but if they have done it successfully, what kind of indicators or metrics are they likely to see if they've done this thoroughly, or at least into the right level that's needed?
Yeah, I think a key component is just having a unifying vision that overlays everything that you're trying to achieve with this. And you have to develop a shared set of KPIs that everyone can buy into. You
Mm.
also use these to help develop high trust among all kind of stakeholders in this, and from lowest level employee to top level of board member to ensure everyone's behind it. And also need to ensure that people are tracking to make sure that timelines are met, that there's proper stage gates in position, and that
Mhm.
all kind of targets are aligned to what you're trying to achieve.
Great.
Hmm. Is there anyone else who'd like to add a question to this, or is everyone kind of comfortable for me to move on? Cool. I'm now just going to move on to the common pitfalls that happen in a merger. And again, through experience that all of these have occurred on many occasions. Um, and from one of our competitors has once done a study where global data has shown over 55 to 70% of deals underperformed due to weak integration strategies. These integrations all fail due to a number of common pitfalls, and through our experience, we've kind of identified seven of them, which seems to occur over and over again. So, first of these is poor business readiness. Teams aren't prepared and strategic intent isn't translated into actions. Key decisions are delayed, vision is misaligned, and poor planning are major contributors to underperformance and inability to execute well. The second of these is burnout and attrition. From a similar study conducted by Harvard, we've seen that nearly 40% of acquired employees would consider leaving within the first year of an integration. A lack of clarity and cultural alignment is often the most common root cause. Teams are repeating tasks, suffering from increased workload during business as usual work, and what making integration happens, and what needs to be done for this. Then there's hidden technical debt. Often it's something actually I've even my own kind of early experience, I haven't not considered this properly as something as my career has developed around you really need to investigate this because there's overlapping systems, unstructured data, and legacy platforms which bog down operations and can create long-term inefficiencies. Often, if you're even running on similar systems already, they're utilized in very different ways, and it needs detailed review of what happens, and which is often forgotten. Then, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a big passion area for me is the cultural and people side of things. This is often misaligned. Integration isn't just about systems, it's about the heart and minds of everybody involved. Resistance to change and lack of buy-in can really derail an integration and delay the progress. And at its worst, can cause the entire strategic case to fall apart for any integration that you're trying to undertake. Then there's lack of clear ownership, is that without defined roles or accountability, a lack of clear responsibilities, or even a proper RACI in place, integration quickly becomes everyone's problem and no one's responsibility. Then off, as I mentioned earlier on, if it aligns quite a lot closely to poor business readiness is inadequate, Jesus, if I could say it'd be a great thing, and pre-planning. More than half of executives waste time due to poor planning and often have to redo previous work or bring in or spend extra money further down the road to come back and do this planning, which should have taken place day one. And then finally, fragmented data. Siloed or inconsistent data prevents informed decision making from taking place and erodes trust in integration process. And for me, I definitely have seen these repeatedly, and I think anyone here who's worked on these integrations before can agree that these all are big common pitfalls.
Mm. It's really interesting because you mentioned a couple of things there of what to look out for. I'm thinking, if I was to go through something like this, what would I be looking for in my teams to know that there is a lack of planning or something's not going right? I think you'd mentioned like duplicated tasks, people leaving, probably people asking the same question, maybe even kind of customer complaints because there's a lack of integration across systems, so things are getting missed. Is there any other kind of things that people might hear on the ground or specific things they might see to start noticing that one of these pitfalls has happened?
I think it's quite an easy one is the hearts and mind thing, which I mentioned earlier on, because that's often occurring because each of these different areas are happening. So if you're not out here in the ground doing proper made pulse surveys, just trying to understand where your staff and your teams are,
Yeah,
because often if anything happens, there's not clear business readiness with a plan in place for commons to bring everyone along the journey, so everyone understands their roles, how they're being impacted, and who they need to reach out to can often lead to that.
yeah.
So if you're not getting clear communication from the ground up about what they're seeing, what they're
Mm.
feeling, it's going to lead to all of these. And I think that's often something forgotten with this. We all think of communication as going downwards from the top, but also in these situations, you have to consider communication upwards to really understand what needs to be done and how to fix things.
Mm. So would you say out of these, what would you say has been the worst of these pitfalls?
For me, from being experiencing it being a part of a firm that's merged and integration and also actually managing them
Mm.
myself, I think cultural and people misalignment, and which is like
Okay.
something that throughout my career I've become quite passionate on is having to manage that journey with everyone involved.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from anyone?
Hi,
Mm.
Rory. You mentioned that you've worked on several integrations before, but what would you say is the worst integration you've ever worked on?
Oh, spicy question. I think from my experience, actually one where I was part of a firm that acquired another firm. And it wasn't if anything wrong, it's just the lack of communication and clear plan for everyone involved on what this new firm was doing and was contributing. Because the firm as in time was struggling financially and they made this big investment how we could work with this organization to improve our service offering and how it would look. But then a year and a half in, none of us understood what this organization was bringing still, how we could work with them. And for us, it just seemed like a money pit as part of our organization when we weren't getting enough profit on our side. And it was kind of got frustrating that we just knew money was going this way, but we just saw no benefit. And we didn't really know how it was improving our offering. If anything, it felt like it was taken away from our offering. So I think the lack of communication that was provided in that situation and lack of clear target and KPIs was a big factor there.
Great. Any other questions before we move on? No?
Perfect. Thank you. In that case, I'll move on to the next slide, which is why an IMO is critical to merger success. So this is quite a detailed slide, but this is, I think, quite important for everyone to fully understand. I'm not going to be painful and read into every little bit here because I don't think anyone wants to hear me speak that much. But there's seven kind of key steps similar to the pitfalls I think are quite important for this. So the first of these is strategic alignment and central oversight. So that's just ensuring that you have a detailed integration roadmap that everyone fully understands what key milestones you're sticking to with a proper system of governance in place. Follow that as cross-functional coordination. And I've kind of highlighted that a little bit earlier on. It's just more about making sure each team is aligned. Are you working with IT that everything's doing well? Are you working with engineering? Are you working with networks, regulatory bodies? Anything like that to make sure everything's fully done and legal team are also involved. This then also you can provide kind of standard kind of execution with templates, playbooks. I think even here in Sasua, I think we've about 100 different playbooks we've written throughout the years at all times because well, there's a standard template. Each organization is different and we have to develop them based on that. And as I mentioned then, the next one is kind of governance, risk and issue management. This just provides clear structures, understands what reviews are taking place, make sure that all risks are identified, external, internal, regulatory, and also lets you understand what dependencies each work stream have on each other to understand how they can integrate properly. And then next one is performance tracking and synergy realization. So as I said earlier on, having proper business readiness is of very big importance to this. If you have understand how you're going to do this, how you're achieving these KPIs, are you getting the results throughout the process? Do you have real-time dashboards, scorecards? Have you got a plan for post deal value capture and how you're going to show this going forward? And also, is there kind of performance reviews of the integration team? Because as much as we can say, oh, this and this needs to be done, we need to be kind of assess on how we're doing and make sure we're helping everyone to achieve proper results. Then next one again, something I'm very passionate about, reaches back to my kind of cultural side of things, is that communication and stakeholder alignment. Often I've seen in a lot of integrations that communication has not been strong throughout and people aren't being brought along the journey. If you have a proper detailed execution and executed communications plan, it really helps make a huge difference in what needs to be achieved and make sure that everyone understands what they need to do at each point. And this also goes forward into cultural management and change management. So have you conducted cultural assessments to understand different risks? Have you got a cultural strategy which makes sure that you all align together? And I actually have seen this before in another firm which was acquired, how they spent actually just a dedicated team of three for about 6 months to ensure that all the cultural pieces aligned because culture was so important to both those organizations, although they were slightly different from different countries, but they want to really bring them together. And this dedicated team worked so tirelessly on this and actually made a very smooth journey to a point that often if you're in one country, you're encouraged to come to one company's drinks or their events or go to their sports days and made a big difference what was happening. And the final one of these is execution support and operational readiness. So have you developed day one and day 100 readiness plans? As I mentioned at the start, you might need to plan for day 500 because it's a long ongoing process to make sure this takes place accordingly. Have you built and updated the integration master plan? Is there functional work streams? And is there systems on board into new ways of working, structures, and systems?
Rory, what's the best example of where an integration's gone well in your career?
Actually, I wouldn't say it was an integration. It was actually a separation I worked on years ago. Obviously, for
Okay.
NDA purposes, I can't give away too much information. But at the end of this, we did a 3-year process. And the first 2 to 2.5 years was just dedicated to pure planning. And there was a massive
Wow.
team with this. It was a global separation. At the end result, after 3 years, it was the largest launch on the London Stock Exchange in 20 odd years. But the amount of planning, I think there's about 40 or 50 of us working across multiple work streams, having our work interrogated every couple of weeks in the planning, having multiple people audit it and do assurance on it, and was constant assessment to make sure we're doing this properly and that everyone was fully bought in the journey. There's constant communication throughout the process how this is being done. And for such a huge, massive organization, a massive split, as lack of better words, it was very impressive how well they managed it.
Great. Thank you. Any questions from anyone on this slide? No?
Oh, Bijal, you've got
Oh,
your hand up?
yeah.
Hi, just curious about the IMO. What kind of capabilities need to sit in that IMO so that they can perform all of those functions that you just talked about?
It does depend slightly on the merger that's happening and what kind of skills are required. I think definitely someone who's kind of understands the deal background and maybe have a bit of compliance understanding. I think someone with strong project management and change management backgrounds are very important. And then often just maybe a bit more of an analyst role to understand, right, how do we slot in here and how we can support this and make sure someone's analyzing the data and the surveys that are coming through. Often you can combine the change role with the communications role and the project management role as well to ensure that's happening efficiently. But again, it does kind of depend on having those core roles and seeing what other kind of expertise are needed with the clients that are involved.
Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions?
Mm, No, no one's got their hand up, Rory.
Perfect. All right. The last one then I would like to talk to is like, what are the key indicators or areas, practices for high performing IMO? So again, I'm not going to go into too much detail here. I kind of want to encourage some questions at the end if I can. But one of these key one for these is start with business readiness. Are you able to assess all the readiness across systems, people, processes, regulatory compliance? Again, people keep forgetting, especially if you work in finance, pharma, any of these areas, and different countries have each different rules. So it might be acquiring one firm that may be based in the UK, but they work in 10 different jurisdictions. And it is each of these aligned, are competition laws aligned to these, and are you allowed to actually do this acquisition properly? Then plan early, execute with structure, stand up your IMO early in the deal cycle. Again, just make sure if someone's aligned day one, understands and managing everything across the integration. Have you got clear work streams and can you complete the major integration within the first 12 months? Again, so unless there's a major like separation out, you're never gonna have anything that big. So the idea is to get the big planning done as early as possible. And I remember that one that we took 2.5, 3 years, and for the first year, it was very much head down, get this planning done before you even start implementing anything. And it would make such a big difference what was achieved. Then, again, as mentioned earlier on, treat IT and data as strategic enablers. I think often these journeys, we forget IT systems could be the slowest part of this, but they also can make things so much smoother if they're on side and people can access data accordingly. As mentioned, prioritize people. Again, a passion project of mine, having seen these work and not work. I think people winning the hearts and minds is the key part of all this. If you can't bring your teams along with you, if you can't get your stakeholders bought into the journey, then you're not going to achieve what you want with the merger. And finally, focus on long-term value. The key point of buying any firm, or acquiring a firm, or doing any kind of merger is that you want to make this a long-lasting, successful operation that really can grow into the future. So build an IMO for longevity and get them to plan as well how that you will continue on as in BAU and you can see continuous results in years to come. Is there certain targets you should be aiming for in terms of integration, in terms of the results, and what needs to occur? And then also just kind of synergy tracking to financial reporting and also using the IMO to build muscle for future integrations, as I just mentioned. Cool.
Last one from me, Rory. If people are listening to this, what would be 2 or 3 key lessons that you'd like people to take away from it?
Plan, plan, and plan is probably the main one. It's so often I see that people have not planned accordingly and put detailed ideas behind this, understand everything that's involved. So when we say business readiness and planning, you really need to be focusing on that. And the second one, I think, is just the people side of it. People keep forgetting how important it is to ensure everyone's brought along the journey. If you're acquiring a firm for because they're certain skill and stuff, but the people aren't brought along, you lose those people, you lose expertise, you lose their skills, you lose what made that organization what it was.
Mm. Great, thank you. Any questions? We've got about another 5 minutes if anyone has any questions. Was that useful? You can put thumb up or thumb down. Great. Rory, I'll hand over to you to close.
Perfect. I just want to thank everyone for their time today. I know it's a hot day in the UK, so thank you for taking your time to sit down with us. If you have any questions about this, if you want to chat, or if you want a recording of this session just to kind of go back over things, please feel free to reach out to me. I love talking, as you can tell, and I find this quite fascinating topics. I love discussing it. So my email's at the end here, so it's rory.murphy@sasua.co.uk, and please feel free to reach out.
Great, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, guys.